We'll start in a minute or so.
Abhay, can check your PPT.
Yeah, I did. I have already done that. I'll start at 12:32 so that yeah, whoever wants to join can join, and whoever is already there does not need to waste time. Hi,
Good afternoon,
Dev.
sir.
Good
Good afternoon,
afternoon.
sir.
Good afternoon, Gurpreet. Good afternoon, Dev Pragya, Sajeev.
Sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. So, if you go on YouTube, there is a very nice news report by DW News on how the world liberal order is collapsing. It's a very interesting report. So, in fact, DW News, France, one news channel, ABC from Australia are giving very interesting analysis as to how history is kind of being repeated and why whatever is happening is changing the way things are. And what they are saying is actually it all started with post World War II. There was something called an Atlantic Charter, which was signed between President Roosevelt of US and Churchill of UK. Remember, pre-war, it was UK which was the dominant, political entity. Post World War II, US emerged as the dominant entity, and this Atlantic Charter was basically the start of the world liberal order, where one of the components of that liberal order was, of course, enhanced democracies across the world, but the second was free trade. Okay, so let's start. Are you able to see my PPT and hear my voice properly?
Yes, sir.
And is the screen moved? Is the PPT moved?
Yes, the
Okay.
PPT is moving.
Okay, perfect. So we are talking about and what I told yesterday, and now you will see in the latest units how MDI 7 and 8 are converging. In fact, lots of things are converge. And why I keep saying this is very important when you are answering your question papers. Please take keywords and concepts out of MD8 when you're writing MDI 7, because there is an intertwinkling of production and labor. Labor markets always follow the production processes. Production processes follow the way the macro politics and the way the macroeconomics of the world moves. So this unit, I've combined these units because all the three units talk about migrant labor, and that's what we started by saying. Why are we studying economics in a course on migration and diaspora? Because the largest set of migration is caused by employment or in terms of labor movement, and that is why we need to understand broadly how does this economics move. So just to make a segue, uh, there is units on trade and technology transfer, and there was GATT, which was created in 47 post World War II, that set out rules for conducting international trade. So this Atlantic Charter that I was talking to before we started this PPT was this charter signed between Roosevelt of America and Churchill of UK. Idea was to enhance trade in the world. In fact, that was the starting of globalization and all that stuff. The idea was that once trade increases and there are free trade increases between nations, it will help bring prosperity across the world. So GATT was nothing but an agreement. WTO is an institution. World Trade Organization is an institution established in 1995. Principle of GATT provides more comprehensive and enduring institutional framework for implementing and extending this principle. So, in case there's a question on GATT or WTO, you can incorporate that. Another interesting fact is China only joined WTO in 2001. In fact, the reason why America was very keen on China joining WTO was the fact this will enable the Chinese markets to open up for foreign products. And at the same time, President Bill Clinton felt at that moment, and then American establishment felt at that moment, that with the opening of trade, democracy will come into China. That has not happened. China is still a single party system, but that was the underlying basis in which they pushed China to come into WTO. Remember, all these international organizations like IMF, World Bank, WTO are US led organizations. So in fact, the purpose of WTO is to increase trade, to reduce trade barriers or tariff. And you see, with this current spate of US tariffs, WTO seems to be quiet as an institution. So we need to understand the geopolitics and the way things function. As I keep saying, there are multiple engines which work. It's not just one engine. It's not just politics. There is economics. There is geopolitics. There are many other things. Another very interesting thing that I picked up was the share of global GDP, and this came out of the DW News. Share of global GDP in 60 vis-a-vis share of global GDP in 2023. In 60, America had a 40% share of global GDP, whereas in 2023, it is only 25%. And look at China, it was 4%, and now it is 17%. So this trade was more political rather than economic, because economically did not make sense. In fact, if you see this, you go on YouTube and search for this DW news report on trade, or the title is, I think, the falling of the liberal order. So you say DW News liberal order, you will come across to this news item. They explain as to how things moved over a period of time since the Second World War, and then go and look at another news item from Wall Street Journal on the chicken wars. There was a war, a trade war, which happened between US and Germany in the 60s, called the chicken war, and how the tariffs impacted various things. It is see, global economics is a very interesting and a very complex thing. So you don't need to go into the economic part of it, but these perspectives help you to understand the economic chapters that we are studying, or the economic subjects that we are studying, to place it in the larger migration and diaspora subject. Okay, this was just a segue. Let's come back. Let's quickly, as I always do, sum up the various units. Summing Unit 3, Economic Globalization, Deeper Transformation in which production of commodities were organized. New vocabulary such as offshoring, outsourcing, global production networks, commodity chains. Analysis of the production is reorganized, and with the production being reorganized, the labor markets and the labor are getting reorganized. And because, as we were reading yesterday in MDI 7, because of this informalization, it is increasing vulnerabilities of people, which is leading to increase of trafficking, and we are almost, the world is coming back to where it started. Economic globalization since 80s have altered this convergence between capital, labor, and production and geography. New business models, Production is no longer bounded by national territories, not bounded by a factory, but spread across national and regional locations. So from Fordist, we moved into post-Fordist. What made this transnational economic coordination possible? Cost advantage and revolution in IT, communication, and transport. These keywords will give you are the ones you will have to use to craft an answer in your examination. Then summing up 4, 5, and 6, diversification of India's occupational structure has been slow, moved from agriculture the way normally agriculture, industry, services. In India, industry was largely bypassed agriculture to services. India's labor market is relatively low labor participation, and that is because rural women are just not there in the labor force or workforce. Even workforce participation rate is hardly improved, except in case of urban males. That is because women are more into household or not into what is classified as economic labor. Self-employed workers in agriculture accounted for a significant part increase of employment. Half of all workers are self-employed. The reason why they are self-employed is not because they want to be self-employed. There are not enough jobs. And since the 90s, we have seen a period of jobless growth. So the GDP is growing, but there are not enough jobs. Unorganized or informal sector encompasses a range of employment arrangement. There is something called an informal economy, and informalization of the workforce. Population of workers in the informal sector grows relative to total workforce. So these were summing up 4, 5, and 6. Let's look at summing up 7, 8, 9.
Sir,
Yeah, Sanjeev.
lending money, at local level and this Hawala also comes under informal sector only, but it's a huge economy market, sir.
Correct. But it will not be considered as a part of the GDP.
Okay. Because it cannot be calculated.
Because it cannot, see, inevitably, that is where the problem with informal economy is. Informal economy, it's very difficult to categorize and calculate, because at the end of the day, the way it is calculated is certain industry sectors are taken and an output based on possibly their self-certification and collection of data and some economic models is the way we calculate GDP. So household work, for example, is not does not come under GDP at all.
Okay.
That is why I said GDP is only economically productive work. So there is so many works which are happening which are not considered productive. For example, raising children is a work.
Yes.
And it's a very important work, but it does not categorize as come under the GDP calculation.
Yes, sir.
So
yes.
that is the reason why when we talked earlier about growth and development, GDP growing means nothing in terms of the development of a country and its citizens.
Sir.
And inevitably, the reason why the media or the politicians use the GDP growth is because these numbers are very easy to project and say that, oh, we are doing great. But in actual case, so a very interesting thing is the fact that since the 60s, some of the the development parameters in the US seem to be coming down, and I think the average age of an American today is less than the average age of a Chinese, which is and US has become an outlier in the Western nations. So that again is a part of the DW news report. I did independently verify, but there are so many things besides that economic growth that we talk about, and that is the reason why PQLI or HDI or happiness index was brought in as a part of development economics to see if the nation is actually developing.
Yes.
Sanjeev?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Let's move forward. Striking aspect of labor, relatively low labor participation, inaugural of economic reforms, works with, and that is one of the factors is because women are much lesser in the labor force and the workforce. Remember, labor force is the total number of people in the age group, in a particular age group, who are having a job or looking for a job. Workforce is ones who are having a job. It could be a formal job, it could be self-employed or whatever. Yeah, Jyoti, you raised your hand. Jyoti, you have a question? Jyoti, your mic is not working or what? You can write it in the chat in case the mic is. Hello.
Or maybe some technical issue.
Maybe. So maybe Jyoti, you can write a chat, please. Okay, some chat has come. Just a minute. My mic is not working. Yeah. So what's your question? Why don't you write it in the chat? You raised your hand, or you want to tell something? Okay. Uh, okay. It was by mistake. Okay. Self-employed workers in agriculture accounted for significant entities. Half the workers are self-employed. This we have seen. And unorganized informal sector accompanies a large employment arrangement, informal economy, informalization of workforce. We have done that. And keyword liberalization, privatization, globalization, LPG. Economic policies aimed at making economies more market oriented. In fact, LPG, you will hear this term very often in the global south. Reducing government control on foreign trade and investment, privatizing state-owned enterprises, enhancing role of private sector. The public partnership is a part of the LPG in entering labor relations, affecting collective bargaining power, leading to job insecurity. So the LPG route is taken by various governments in global south to essentially try and get production or business or investment, ostensibly to try and increase employment. The unintended consequences of this is job loss, insecurity, and vulnerability. So let's look at these units, determinants of migrants in general, development implications of labor migration, trends in internal migration. So all the three units has a lot of charts and numbers. I do not think you need to be really concerned about the number or trying and remembering the charts and numbers because once you are able to get an overview, you'll be able to write an answer. The charts and numbers, will unnecessarily distract you from the larger understanding of why migration is happening. This also we have done earlier, but at the end of the day, there are push factors and pull factors for migration, labor migration. And push and pull factors are economic and non-economic. So because we are in MDI 7 and 8, we are doing the economic part. Let's look at only the economic factors. Obviously, poverty, high taxation, employment, overpopulation are the push factors. Labor, high wages, welfare benefits, healthcare, low cost of living. As I keep telling you, and I repeat again, inevitably people migrate because everybody wants a better life. That better could be actual or perceived. So these are the push and pull factors of migration. Internal and international migration. Internal is within the country, international is outside. Motivations for internal differ. Because remember, in an international migration, it is much more costly. There's a change of culture. There are a whole lot of considerations that one has to look at before doing an international migration. Two basic factors of migration: distance and duration. Distance point of view, under 4, rural to rural, rural to urban, urban to rural. Now, urban to rural normally does not happen, but during COVID, there was a lot of urban to rural. So, in case there is a question on migration, you can talk about the fact there are two types of migration: internal and international. The motivations are different. Uh, Factors on migration include distance and duration. From the distance point of view, there are four types of migration. Uh, can also be divided into other four types: intra-district, inter-district, intrastate, interstate, national, and international. So that's the way you can craft your answer. More often than not, people migrate when they are in dire straits, or second, most of the migration happens when there is already somebody in a particular place, what we typically call chain migration. So somebody from the village, somebody from the extended family, somebody from my family is in a particular state. I was typically giving you this example of this boy is selling groundnuts. So I asked them in winter. So I asked them, what do you do in summers? So he said he had a sugarcane shop. And so I said, are they relatives? No, these are people from the village. And that is why these guys have migrated. Factors affecting between wages for equivalent job, access to benefit, employment opportunities, desire to travel. A desire to learn a new language, build new skills and qualification also is a factor which affects migration. More often than not, it is employment, access to benefit, and difference in wages. Obviously, you get a lot of people who migrate to the US are because there is an unequal exchange. So if I'm earning $1, that is currently equivalent to 84 rupees. A desire to escape repression, impact of satellite TV and internet in changing people's expectation. Again, as I said, doing better can be a perceived doing better. Within India, unwillingness of people within the domestic economy to take a Dutch-filled job. Remember, also there is, for example, a status elevation when I am migrating. Oh, this is my foreign returned relative. He might be doing a janitor's job in London, but he's coming from London. Remember the movie Pardes, where this guy is coming from the US. He's such a big deal, but the people coming from Sri Lanka or Thailand or somewhere were not as much a big deal. So that is a factor. Numerous advantages: fresh skills. Migration is a driver of innovation, entrepreneurship, pressure on government to reform. It has a multiplier effect. Reducing skilled labor shortages and expanding labor supply make a country attractive to FDI income. So, and inevitably, it is the migration which, look at the fact, the whole America is a land of immigrants. Trump himself is an immigrant from Europe. Whole India has a whole lot of immigrant communities. At the end of the day, remember, the human being evolved in Africa. So every human being across the world is actually an immigrant, if you look at it technically. So migration provides numerous benefits. So in case you have a question on migration, you can give these salient points. You can write a few lines about these salient points to get your answer and get your marks to clear the paper. Development implications, remittances. India today has the highest migrant population and the highest remittances derived from those migrants. Allowing for migration both within and between countries, potential to increase. So the migration to Kerala has the effect of improving people's life in Orissa and Bihar and UP. So whether it's internal migration or international migration, migration is the story of humankind. Recently, I was seeing this article in which migrants from West Bengal were hassled in Orissa. Now, what typically happens is inevitably when politics of identity is practiced, it has many unintended consequences. But migration is the normal way for innovation, for raising a personal income, health, education prospect, where to live. Large gains in human development can be achieved by lowering barriers and other constraints to movement. And inevitably, we have also seen that whenever barriers are raised, then illegal routes are opened up. So there is a major development implication at source. Labor migration has the potential to serve as an engine of growth. Again, most of the science and technology and the cutting edge development which is happening in the US are being done by Indians and Chinese. You look at the Fortune 500 companies, you look at all the major companies, these are all migrants. In receiving countries, it has rejuvenated workforce, rendered many traditional sectors like agriculture, service, promoted entrepreneurship. Remember, migrants are already somebody who have the stomach for taking a risk. And because they have the stomach for taking the risk, they are the ones who would, run startup, do entrepreneurships, meet the demand for skills for emerging high-tech industries.
But it comes with cost, sir.
Sorry?
Migration comes with a cost.
Yes. Everything cuts with. So that is where there is that consideration or motivation to migrate internationally or even internally comes with a cost. See, for example, if a migrant is traveling from, let's say, Bihar or Orissa to Kerala, he needs the train fare. He needs somebody out there who can host him. Or for the first time, if a person goes, he needs to figure it out. Or a migrant goes to Bombay, there is a cost. That cost multiplies when you look at international migration, because there's a visa cost, there is a passport cost, there is a travel cost. So migration is not simple. Sanjeev, you are absolutely right. It comes with a cost.
Sir.
Hello.
Sir.
Yeah, Gurpreet, tell me.
Sir, regarding the remittances, one clarification, sir. Sir, earlier, about 20, 30, 40 years back, when Punjabis went to Gulf countries and even to America and Canada also, one brother was there and one was here. And from the Gulf countries, they wasted every time send remittances to the rural area of Punjab. Just as a drone in nowadays, a drone on the village can identify the remittances effect and the persons who have gone abroad. But now, sir, the islets from the last 3-4 years, and the families, NRIs, those are selling their land because the second generation is unable to get back. So lot of money is going to those countries. And secondly, sir, agriculture in Punjab is going to be affected by this way. That land is being purchased by the rich persons. Those are having illegal money. That is a tax evasion. We already discussed in one of the your lectures, sir.
Correct.
So, sir, what is the present scenario? keeping remittances versus the present circumstances of the state.
Correct. So see so inevitably there are social consequences of migration. There will
Sir.
always be a social consequence of migration. So for example, when you would have studied about the caregiving industry and the women migrating from Philippines or the nursing industry in Kerala, when any migration happens, there is obviously a social cost.
Sir.
So one has to balance between economics and social. More often than not, most people, in terms of a push factor, look at, say, for example, if there's a family in poverty and is not able to feed themselves and gets an opportunity to migrate, they will more than happy to be migrating so that they are able to send remittance back home. But there is a social cost on that. And Punjab, what typically is going through is a social cost of, let's say, the Green Revolution. The Green Revolution, for example, started off with producing surplus. People had money. That money, also understand, uh, most people in the rural economy did not understand money initially. They understood land, they understood agriculture. For example, look at Gurgaon. The whole Gurgaon was developed by selling land. So the initial people who sold land didn't understand money. So what they did, the first thing they did was buy Marutis, go into substance abuse, and the money finished. So
Sir.
today you see most of the people who are running brokerage or land dealing firms are the initial people, original residents of Gurgaon, who sold their land, and they had no money. So now they are doing brokerage. Similarly, in Punjab, obviously, when because of various social conditions, including a big drug problem, a lot of children went to Canada.
Sir.
Now, for example, then it became, then there is this social implications of a peer pressure. So if everybody is going now, I need to go. It is good with, it's like dowry system. Now everybody cannot afford a dowry, but when an institution of marriage starts incorporating social evils, there are consequences to it. And that is why the state needs to bring in policies. How does one go it? For example, that is where welfare activities and welfare investments like education and health actually help in stopping these particular trends.
Sir.
So it is running a government, or running a state, or running a country, and as big a complex a country like India, you need more federal structures to be able to handle policy, because otherwise it becomes very difficult. It goes awry. And
Sir.
everything that you do has its implication in terms of intended and unintended consequences. So for example, there was this study by Punjab University about how in Punjab various families are indebted to the tune of crores because children are going abroad.
Sir. True, sir.
So there is a social cost. So migration does not happen willy-nilly. There are obviously economic and social costs to it.
Sir, even bad governance and system failure is also equally important as the drugs problem. So system failure from a long time.
Absolutely. See, always there is never one single factor. A single factor, if ever there is a single factor, it's called determinism. It never happens. In real life, there are obviously multiple factors at play. It is easy as a media narrative to bring out a single factor.
Sir.
Okay, Gurpreet?
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Okay.
please.
Okay, let's move on. Mobility brings new ideas, knowledge, resources to migrant and origin countries. So inevitably, the migrants who go out, when they come back, they come out with new ideas, new way of social hierarchy, new ways of doing things. Money sent back by migrants exceeds official aid. Gains are often shared with their families and communities back home. So, there is a setting up of community infrastructure. Various things happen, and there were research which says that once remittance come in, more often than not, first that money is spent in terms of food, then it leads to better education, then people look at making their houses more durable. This is in the form of cash, but families benefit in other ways, what is called social remittances. Reduction in fertility, higher school enrollment, empowerment women. We are talking about the positives. Obviously, remember, the positives do not come on their own. There are negatives too. So at ever, any argument which looks at only the pros is a one-sided argument. There are obviously implications. Everything has an implication. Everything that you do has an implication. Help stabilize, improving economic conditions, raise level of household consumption, implications of well-being and upward mobility. We had seen a particular example in some other block and unit about these remittances coming, leading to pakka houses in Orissa and Bihar and Eastern UP on the lines of changing of culture. For example, there was a very interesting case study about Haryana, how the reducing sex ratio got the Haryanvi Jats to now bring Keralite wives or Northeastern wives, leading to changes of cultures in the Jatland. Because everything that you do has an implication. And remember, demographic implications are much long lasting than immediate. You can't see them immediately. There's a social cost of migration. Yes, Ajit. Yes, Ajit.
I just want to add one small this Pakka house. I mean, the Pakka house culture is now slowly turning into gaining a lot of land pieces, mounting to large piece of lands, sir. Farmhouse, nearly 10, 20, 30. Now that Pakka house construction is no more, sir, in some places. Like in Hyderabad, now people, especially with the remittances, they are after purchasing of a lot of lands in outskirts.
Okay. So these are various costs. So obviously this becomes an additional information which is coming from Sanjeev. So when we start pooling in information, you realize that there are a lot of good points, but there are also cons in terms of how cultures move, how things move, how we tend to see the world. Social cost of migration. Cost, time spent to find a new job, acquiring a new skill, time spent in traveling for the job. People reluctant to move out. So what is the cost to the family? What is the cost in terms of the children's upbringing? There are costs. Everything has a cost. Change in family composition, family separation, abandonment of old people, child outcomes, missed opportunity to give quality time to young. It again, a media narrative might look at something with a rosy picture, but that's a deterministic way and a reduction of the whole process. The whole process is much more larger and complex, and there are consequences both which can be seen and which is felt sometime later. For example, as I was giving the example of the Green Revolution in Punjab and Haryana, it led to surplus production, the country becoming self-sufficient in grain, but it has consequences. For example, in Punjab, there is a train which goes to Rajasthan with cancer patients. So all that pesticides and insecticides and leaching into the groundwater has led to increased incidence of cancer, which is now coming out. So everything has a consequence. Everything that you do has a consequence. the very fact that you enrolled for this course has a consequence in the sense that time could have been spent in something else. There's a consequence, there's a cost consequence of paying money, there's a consequence of going through the classes, taking an examination. Everything has a consequence. Receiving regions. Try to explore opportunities available at distant places. Maybe within the state or outside the state or outside the country. Through contacts, generally from their own locality, they've entered. And more often than it is kind of a chain migration. Both internal, the country, and international. The employers prefer migrant workers for several reasons. They have little bargaining power. So we come back to the Marxist ideology on capitalism. It is basically a exploitative force. Make them obedient and disciplined. Migrant workers in general do not decline working hours. For example, we had this news item that if all the workers in Kerala start taking holiday for Chhat, Kerala's GDP will go down by about 2%. Get engaged in hazardous or unsafe job knowingly or unknowingly. So most, if you look around in wherever you stay, most of the daily wagers are migrant workers. You'll see them in painting, construction, without security gear. They have no choice. They are vulnerable. Little disruption in production process or service in receiving region. Casualization of workers in response to labor markets. To sustain production is termed as low route. We talked about low road route to accumulation. Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to make more profit. And that's where the migrants come in. So there are implications both for receiving regions and for sourcing regions.
Sir, so it's a win-win situation for all.
Need not be, Sanjeev.
Okay, sir.
In fact, see, again, it is also determined on a lot of factors. So if a migrant worker, unless unless he comes from such poor conditions that he is able to get a job and make some money and send remittance back home, it again may not be a win situation because it might affect his health. Remember, in a casualization, there is no security net. Now, in an absence of a security net, if that labor has a medical or a physical injury, then the whole system collapses.
Yes, sir.
And for the employer, he'll just replace one worker with another worker.
Yes, sir.
So it is not as straightforward a win-win situation. In fact, what we were seeing yesterday or in early units on trade, if a production job comes in the global south, it's not a win-win situation because the global north is putting conditions, pushing down wages, making people vulnerable. They might be getting an employment, but they don't have a choice. And it only becomes a win-win when there is a choice. When there is an equal amount of information, there is a social security and there's a choice. So if you do not have a choice, let's say you as a white collar worker is going to a company where there is no choice. And if you do something which could make your job insecure, that's not a win-win situation. You
Sir.
are under pressure.
Sir.
Right?
Sir.
Okay. So there is the term which was used earlier was called brain drain, out migration of skilled personnel. So from the 60s onwards, India lost a lot of professionals to US, to the Western world, because, for example, engineers or doctors who were coming out of the Indian education system did not find jobs commensurate with their education. and they went out to find out work. Migration of high skilled people from one country to another due to lagging of opportunities in the own country, political instability, working conditions for a better life. Everybody looks at a better life. Brain drain usually regarded as an economic cost. Now, this whole concept of brain drain, because of transnationalism, because of betterment of transportation, betterment of communication, has moved into what we now call brain gain. Because, and that is why all nations are reaching out to their diasporas, and the diasporas are contributing with their skill to the sourcing nations, to the home nations. Country loses service of skilled persons based on education and training. Remember, earlier a whole lot of education was subsidized by the government. So the government was spending money on all these people, these professionals, who then would leave their country and go abroad. By providing adequate opportunity, provisioning to the individual, skill and enterprise. With wide access to information, people have explored, compared, and moved out for a better. See, the whole concept of holding back is no longer applicable in this era of globalization, because everybody is getting information from various sources. So everybody will look at wherever he or she gets a better opportunity. And that is why the pressure on governments, organizations, industries to keep innovating, making opportunities. Look at yourself. You will move jobs the minute you will get a better job, in terms of salary, in terms of working conditions, in terms of movement, or in terms of what you think are your career goals. Driven by both push and pull factors. Percentage of Indian immigrants among all global immigrants admitted had increased from 5% in 1999 to 25% in 2005, and which is now further. Think about the fact that when the Ukraine-Russia war broke out, we suddenly realized there were tens of thousands of Indian students studying in Ukraine. Think about the fact how much of a foreign exchange was being spent by Indian families to get their children educated, and why a country the size of India could not, get those facilities or to develop that educational, facilities to intake those Indian students. Today, again, a large part of Indian students are emigrating to Gulf, for example, because our infrastructure is not keeping pace. And that is why investment into welfareism, which includes education and health, is actually investment into a country's future. Did not come into sharp focus in India earlier in literature of science or society till late 60s as a policy problem, despite public discourses making a hue and cry about it. So yesterday somebody was asking why labor is not into a political. See, the way politics and democracies work is there has to be numbers. So people have to be lobbying politicians and making it a political issue. If people are not making it a political issue, then some other issue becomes a political issue. In phases from brain drain of 60s and 70s to brain bank of 80s and 90s to brain gain in the 21st century. Because now they suddenly realize that these people could actually contribute to the knowledge pool and the experience pool of India. So today, India should not, or any nation should not be imagined as something within a national boundary. So India or any country today can extend beyond a national boundary with globalization and transnationalism. Impact, there is, in case you had a question on brain drain, You can write these points. Impact of is quite difficult to estimate because of not. And again, as I said, anything which comes as a policy should be based on some research-based data. It has to be always a research-based policy. Otherwise, it's a political, rabbit out of your hat. Brain drain has both a supply side and a demand side. A reduction of labor force reduces home country's production possibility. In fact, the whole Chinese cutting edge industry is made out of the Chinese immigrants who have come back. And most of these people got their education and training in the US and the West. They have come back and set up these cutting edge technologies. For example, the Apollo Hospital is set up by an Indian who left for the US and then came back. So India has also its success stories like China. Volume of emigration of people, education, skills, amount of money taken with them also determine the overall effect. Public and private consumption, investment spending, higher qualification skill, a better income. So Indians today are one of the richest immigrant community in the US because a lot of them are professionals. It affects the tax collections. And remember, these people are paying tax in the US. So impact of brain drain, 30 million with the presence in 189 countries. Indian diaspora produces an annual economic income of about 400 billion, almost 30% of India's GDP. I don't know which year this is. 1 million Indians in the US who represent only 0.1 of the India earn equivalent to about 10% of India's national income. So Indians are extremely successful everywhere in the world. And that is why even states need to now bring in research to see how many immigrants from other states are there, what kind of immigrant composition is there in the industry, in terms of welfare to those immigrants. If we start doing identity politics, it will play havoc with this country. Causes of internal migration, growth pockets, inability of rural areas to absorb incremental growth in labor force, perception about a better life in urban area. And as I said, better life is always a real or a perception. It could be an abstract thing. For example, most people, rural people in the urban areas, I don't think so their life is anyway better than what they are in the rural areas. But it's a perception of a better life. And employment. Then there is forced migration because of natural disasters, social and political problems, displacement by development projects, other factors like marriage, retirement, health problems, acquisition of housing. So inevitably, there is also a trend that once a rural family acquires a particular social status or a particular money, like for example, Sanjeev was talking about buying a farmhouse. Similarly, rural families buy and come buy a house in the urban areas in a city or buy flats and start doing this urbanization of their culture. So you will see in pockets that there are people from the rural areas which are there. Economic prosperity always has consequences. They don't want to be equated to rural areas. Reasons of migration for males and females differ. Females by far till now were migrating only because of marriage. Males was primarily because of labor market. Today, a lot of migration, there's a feminization of migration. Women also are migrating because of jobs. Women are also migrating because of travel. 20 to 24 years. And that is normally a trend across the world. You migrate when you're younger. You don't migrate when you're older. Normally. Then there are obviously there are problems of migrant labor in becoming integral part of economic, cultural, and political lives, and that is compounded when you do an international migration, face political representation, lack of political inadequate houses, low paid, insecure, and hazardous law, limit access to public service. So when a city or a state starts saying that public services are only available to residents of that state or city, then you are creating a hardship for the migrant, and that is discriminatory, or discrimination based on ethnicity, religion, region, caste, and gender, and it will inevitably hurt economically. Because remember, economically, there most communities are tied to each other, and if disruptions happen, then obviously economics will get affected. Delivery service to ordinary citizens, migrant are excluded because of administrative structure and traditional way of functioning. Few efforts to take care of specific problems of migrants to deliver them to public service to which every Indian is entitled. So, a new rule: you go to a hospital, they want an identity card. Why would healthcare need an identity for you? And why is it such a must to get a healthcare or an education? Why do you need an identity? So identity is more in terms of an administrative structure rather than anything else. Because at the end of the day, if you have met with an accident, would the doctor not treat you without an identity? Or if you have a very high fever or you have a life-threatening disease, would the doctor or a hospital not treat you without an identity? If you start thinking in those terms, you realize that it is more an administrative structure rather than anything. And today, in the new digital economy, it is more about collecting data and selling that data rather than the health giving. And various excuses are brought out at that. Essentially, in India, any person who goes to a hospital should be treated. Why does a hospital, and especially a public hospital made out of taxes from Indians, why do they need an identity? It should just be treated. So, and it was never the case. Now it is becoming a case because it's an administrative, structure which has been created, and various excuses given to create that administrative structure. This not only affects the migrant themselves, but their families as well. Administrative difficulties, absence of social protection, lack of housing facilities, limited access to finance, political exclusion. So if you and me decide to take a loan, the bank will ask you for a collateral. But all these news items of all these big industrialists who just get loans without any collateral, and then they default, and then there is a new term which has come, which is called a corporate haircut, where they have to give a fraction of whatever they owe. Now look at the difficulties of a migrant. It becomes that much more difficult. And think about the fact, in this informalization of economy, if migrants are, spending time only to get an identity card, this and that, he or she will lose their job. So that is where then illegal channels come up to cater to all this. Labor migration from India. 31%. This is 2001, a very old picture. 31% Southeast Asia, 10% in US, South Africa 6%, Gulf is 19%. So after Southeast Asia, so there is a huge Indian population in Southeast Asia, 31%. But this is a very old thing. I didn't try and search for a latest figure. The latest figures might be identical or might have changed. For example, the Gulf might have reduced. Second World War, crucial watershed in history of genesis of Indian diaspora. 70s, US overtook both UK and Canada as the prime developed country of destination for Indians. Remember, in the 60s, the IITs got set up, 4 years for engineering. So typically, the first batch or the batches which the first few batches which came out of the IITs did not find enough opportunities in India, and they all left for abroad. %7 mark in 2004. Again, very old figures. Also attributed to US Immigration and Nationality Act Amendment of 65 brought in force in 68. There was a family reunification clause, gave priority to high skilled training and educated professionals, at least for first 7 to 10 years. So for example, US education institution had something called an optional practical training, which got students to who studied in US institutions to do 2 to 3 years of optional practical training, which led them to get absorbed in the US economy, which is what the Trump administration has gone after, to try and cancel the OPT so that the students need to come back. And that is why last year, for example, almost 3 lakh, over 3 lakh students went from India to US to study. Think about how much of the money Indians are spending in the US, which could have been plowed back into the Indian economy. Modern phase of Indian immigration, different from the earlier phase. Earlier phase was unskilled. The modern phase was highly skilled. Through employment gate, another stream has taken through the academic gate. In 2004-5, India retained #1 position in US university enrollment. And I'm sure that still continues. Considering, and in the West, considering, the number of IELTS, the number of TOEFL examination, the number of GRE, SAT examinations. And remember, this money also goes to their economy rather than our economy, because these are all US-based institutions. So not only skilled migration, employment, but also as students, empowerment of. So one way to look at it is brain drain. Another way to look at it is brain gain, because now you have this big, powerful diaspora. And in fact, India used that powerful diaspora during the Indo-US nuclear deal, where the diaspora actively lobbied for India. Within the EU, the largest Indian diaspora is in UK, highest earning, best educated, eminence in business, information technology, health sector, media. Indians are excelling everywhere. In the Gulf, it was earlier the clerical and technical positions. Upsurge of flow of workers and laborers began from India. India has replaced even the non-national Arabs in Gulf. 8.18 millions in the period 2001-2015. In fact, the earlier composition of the Gulf was mainly from Kerala, but subsequently today, people from all Indian states, including UP, Bihar, are also there in Gulf. And I was told people from the Gulf actually are now moving to Europe and the US. So there is a change of composition as their contracts are for a short period of time, usually not more than 2 years. Remember, Gulf also has this additional thing that there is no naturalization, so you cannot become citizens out there. And that is why, Europe and US were better destinations. Now, with US clamping down on its naturalization process, possibly something else will happen. Facilitated proliferation of recruitment and placement agencies colluding with prospective employers, and dubious ones rapidly duping elite. So all these factors parallelly happen. And every thing which happens leads to intended and unintended consequences. So there is a case study of Kerala, rise of disposable income from remittances, consumption patterns, enhanced family investment in education for migration, consumerism, house building activities drained the state of development potential of its remittance receipts. Plus, there are now, old people residing alone, orphans, financial bankruptcy leading to suicide. New Rich in Kerala reported to have created a climate of resentment against them among other communities. And remember all these. So if one particular community or one particular family suddenly starts becoming opulent or consumerist, there is resentment from others. It leads to change of politics, change of hierarchies, political hierarchies. Does not have still a comprehensive policy on labor migration or overseas employment, whether for skilled or unskilled workers. Moving from time from one of restrictive regimes to compensatory to restorative to developmental. This is again an old research. There is still not a comprehensive policy. State-wise, there has been some movements, but not enough. Because it's a whole subject in itself, and unless somebody sits and focuses on the subject, there are too many issues at hand, too many balls in the air. Okay, so let's sum up. Emigration of married men who left behind responsibility of management household to women, transferred about 1 million women into efficient home managers, created a social and psychological problem called Gulf wives and Gulf parents, not accompanying workers to their death. And besides the Gulf wife and Gulf parents, you also have the immigrants, parents and immigrant relatives. So if you, even in Delhi, if you notice places where there were extended families, you suddenly find old people. All the children have gone abroad. Increase in temporary migration over permanent of even skilled migrants to developed countries has led to creation of what we have called nomadic families, and new kind of forced return on the other for skilled migrants, but these have not been assessed or analyzed. So again, each thing, each migration or each movement has its consequences unless somebody studies it, unless there is some research, unless some data generated. We are all talking in the air. So, for example, this new research by Punjab University on indebtedness in the Punjab rural households by the children, by the families wanting to send their children abroad in tens of crores, because it's an expensive thing. The whole process is exemptive. Suddenly, and once you have that research and that data, then you can make policy prescriptions. Unorganized or informal sector encompasses informal economy, informalization of workforce we have been talking about. There are some references. Sucha Singh Gill, migration of labor in India, and you can see in your various units. Let me stop in case you have a question.
Sir, one.
Sanjeev, tell me.
The last slide, can you please again? You have mentioned about one Irudaya Rajan. Next one.
Migration and development, the Kerala experience.
Now he is contributing to some articles in Hindu paper, sir.
Okay. I'm sure. See, at the end of the day, this is a book he has written along with Zacharia Casey. So obviously, see, again, the idea of, hang on, let me just stop here. The idea of more and more people contributing to this research and looking at their perspective, at the end of the day, that's how your knowledge accumulation happens, when multiple perspectives come in. So now, for example, in this class, you gave the example of Hyderabad and how people with remittances are now buying farmhouses. Now, this is a new perspective. So it helps us in writing an answer in the examination, but it also understands how things are changing. And unless there is enough media coverage and a scholarly pursuit on each aspects of migration, labor migration, or migration because of marriage, or brain drain, or brain gain, we are not able to understand the whole gamut of it. And then we tend to look at the media narrative of reductionism. That is really good or really bad. Any other question? I hope I didn't go too fast. I try to keep it as simple as possible. Again, as I said, in your units, there are a lot of data tables. There is a lot of data and percentages. Do not get stuck on the percentages and the datas and the numbers. The idea is, if you are able to understand the overview of it and craft your answer in your examination paper based on certain points, you will be able to clear your examination and get your degree. Any other question?
Sir, with regard to collateral and non-collateral, you just mentioned about collateral and non-collateral loans.
Correct.
So I want to add one more point that I've been observing that a lot of people are, it's a fact that a lot of people are migrating to US to pursue higher studies. Now with private entities coming into the picture, a lot of money is in circulation, sir. Even to hundreds of crores, thousands of crores. If we approach a bank, they will ask for collateral. And when we approach a private entity, they don't ask for it, anything, and they will give whatever the amount is required. So unable to understand from where this money is coming.
So Sanjeev, point is the fact that, say for example, I'll give you an example of loan apps. There are a lot of Chinese loan apps today, Chinese and other loan apps which are available, where you can, without any collateral, get you a short, small 5,000, 10,000 immediate need.
Yes.
Now, these are what is called the predatory lending techniques. And this is there across the world. Anything in India, remember, is not only going to be contained to India. India, it's going to be tailored to specific needs, but these predatory loan tactics are there everywhere. Now, inevitably, let's keep that where the money is coming from. The idea is that in case, and because they don't take any collateral, most people get lulled into fact that, oh, this is very simple. They take a loan, and then when they have to repay, and if they don't repay, for example, these have been various news items which have come, they don't repay, then these predatory loan giving apps then start chasing you. And because you have installed that app on the phone, they are able to access your WhatsApp and send messages to everybody, and it is very humiliating. A lot of people down south have committed suicide. Now, inevitably understand, money can be from various sources. So possibly there could be a private trust which could have money collected from various entities. It could also be a money laundering technique.
Sir,
Please understand, with the capital moving back and forth very easily, it is impossible to track how the money flows.
yes,
And that is why when government creates unnecessary barriers, as I said, whenever a barrier is going to be created, people are going to move into the illegal route. And that is why it is, see, what is government? Government will, the government has got a bureaucracy, will look at administrative convenience. What is the administrative convenience? If you need a loan, you need to have a collateral. That's an administrative convenience.
yes,
The banker will not look at the fact that this gentleman or this lady has been banking for decades with this particular bank, stays in the locality, the banker knows the person, and the person has the capability of paying. They will look at the fact, what is the collateral?
yes,
So this is an unnecessarily administrative structure created by the bureaucracy.
okay,
As I said, if you are met with an accident and it's a life-threatening situation, where will you provide an identity from? Or if somebody has picked you up and taken you to a public hospital, not a private hospital, public hospital, made out of your tax money, why do you need an identity? It's an administrative convenience.
sir,
Now, when the administrative convenience and bureaucracy becomes heavy on the politics, see, actually, it is a democracy. The politics should drive the bureaucracy. It's actually the bureaucracy driving the polity.
okay,
And in that case, there is a push factor and saying there is so much of corruption, there is so much of bureaucracy, there's so much of red tape. I'm taking my business out. I'm going out. You are losing skill that way.
sir,
So you see, it's a very complicated intermixing of various things at play. Nothing is so simple.
sir,
Okay.
sir.
Any
Yes.
other question? Okay. In case there is no other question, we'll call it a day. I'll see you for the last class of this particular set of classes at 5:30. We are going to be doing on profiling the offenders. See you at 5:30. Have a good lunch and whatever classes are left. Bye-bye, guys. Bye, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.